We're less than a week out from SBD Austin, and yes, there have been a couple big name dropouts, but this meet is still absolutely stacked. I'll show you everyone's best list from prep on the way to making 18 predictions across both the men's and women's divisions, and plus, the Sheffield Wildcards will finally be announced at this meet, so at the end of the video, I'll give my quick predictions for those as well. But first, I'll be showing you everyone who's going to be competing, starting off with the men. Josh Hall, number 12. I'm going to be ranking these in order of the percentage they've totaled off the American record in their weight class, because that's how the meet is going to be scored. So he's a 105 lifter who has an absolutely monster deadlift. I spoke about him in one of my recent videos talking about USAPL lifters coming across to PA. He's one of them. He's also one of the lifters that got promoted to prime time because of the dropouts that we've had. Similarly, in the 11th nomination, Victor Rodriguez, the 120 lifter, again relatively new to the sport. And like Josh Hall, stepping up into the primetime session because of the dropouts, which I mentioned, we had Rondell Hunt was the big one, but then also Gavin Aiden, Dom Fuqua, Brandon Petrie, right? The Battle of 93s would have been epic, but it is what it is. The good thing is that these lifters were already going to be competing. They just got promoted up into the primetime session. So it's not like they're coming in on peak. So we should still see them hit some relatively big numbers. Michael Davis, former best American 105 in the world, former world silver medalist in number 10th in the 105s. Then Jaden Lau, another USAPL lifter, making their long-awaited PA debut. Very much an 83 contender, and I have a pretty juicy prediction coming about what I think he's going to be able to do. Then Delaney Wallace, who, of course, we all know is an 83 lifter, but the word on the street is he's going to be competing as a 93. He's spoken about moving on to 93s for a while. We know he's like single-digit body fat lean as an 83 on the platform. So I think it's about time he moves up to 93. And he hasn't announced anything officially, but I'm pretty sure he's going to be going as 93. So that 867.5 that he did at PA Nats in the 83s would be 94.34% off the 93 American record, which is 919.5 by Jonathan Kaiko. Then Kwaku Nyarko, another one who stepped up into the primetime session and has got a pretty solid percentage on him, 94.44 in the 59s. Of course, Waska's 638 is the American record there, fresh off of Junior World's bronze medal Kwaku is. So we'll see what he can do in the 59s. And Sean Noriega in the 83s, 857.5, just under 95% of Joey B's American record of 904. In the 83s, we'll see what he can do. Then top 5, you have Ashton Ruska, whose best total is 968, which, granted, he did weighing 105.7 in the USAPL, but I'm still counting it for all intents and purposes here. Can he get that, and can he beat that this time? You know, fully healthy, I think Ashton Ruska is capable of putting up Anthony McNaughton level numbers. The question is he fully healthy, and can he do that this meet? Well, I'll have predictions of that coming up. And then number 4, Jonathan Garcia, 718 at 66, is just 2 kilos below the American record held by Avery Jackson of 720, who Jonathan lost to at PNS this year in what was a very cool battle to see. See if he can get that back. Into the top 3, you have Joe Jordan, whose 720 total at World Games in his World Games winning performance matches Avery Jackson's American record. So we'll see how many more kilos he can add onto that. Bob Matthews in a number 2, whose 978.5, similar to Joe Jordan, matches the American record, which Dennis Cornelius would hold that, 978.5. But yeah, we know Bob is good for way more than that, and will he hit the magical 1,000? We will see. We will see. Jesus Olivares is the top nomination, though. I mean, he's also on 100%, but it is his own world record, 1152.5. In the super heavyweights, of course, and I mentioned in my previous video where his deadlifts have been looking better than ever, so can he finally hold on to that and walk away with a new deadlift and potentially even total record? Onto the women's athletes. So again, we have the 12 in prime time. We have Layla Taylor in the 84s, Ariel Patra in the 52s. There are a couple of 52 lifters who are all very close together, so we're a cool little clash there. Jessica Bittner, who is in the 84s, still has yet to match her best ever 76 kilo total though, of 585 in the 84s. So we'll see if she can finally break past that at this meet. Number 9, Chelsea Sabat, another one who's gone up a weight class from the 69s into the 76s. Jamie Fisher, another one of the 52s in an 8th. And with the same total of 415, Vanessa Pineda, another one of the 52s. So we have 3 of them going head to head here. Angelina Martinez in the 63s. I'm pretty sure she's competing at 63. She competed as light 69 at Advances, so we'll see what she does back down in the 63s if she can replicate or even beat those numbers of 522.5 that she put up. Into the top 5, another 63 and another very hyped Powerlifting America debut, this time from Christiane Hazard, who I spoke about in that previous video as well. She's looking very strong in the 63s. 525 is what she totaled in USAPL. Haven't seen much of her training, but I'm not going to spoil my predictions. I'll leave that coming up. But number 4, Gabby Martinez in the 69s. We're going to have quite the battle of the 69s coming up. Gabby Martinez is right up there, 553. And with the same best total of 553 in the 69s, Jackie Mileto, like I said, same exact total that she did at the NAPFs, so slightly more recently than Gabby's. And then number 2, Natalie Richards, who was the former world champion and world record holder in the 57s. 516.5 is her best ever total. And her total dipped below the 500s because of injury, but based on training, it looks like she's coming back. Again, I'm not going to spoil my predictions, but she's looking pretty good. But the number 1 nomination is the American record holder in both the 63s and the 69s, Meg Scanlon. She did 573.5 at Advances, and she will be competing in the 69s this time as well. So we'll see what she can do against the other 2 69 kilo ladies, this time with head-to-head competition. Unlike at Advances, she didn't really have that head-to-head competition as much. Speaking of Advances, I've just become an affiliate, so if you want to support the channel and get the best powerlifting shoes in the game, use code PRESSER for 10% off. I'll leave a link in the description as well. But okay, on to the men's battles. So, as you all know, I'm a huge fan of head-to-head clashes in weight classes kilo for kilo. So even though this meet is sort of cross weight class and being scored on percentage of American record, I still think it's cool to highlight the weight class battles we're going to have. So in the 66s, probably the main one actually, Joe Jordan v Jonathan Garcia is going to be very close. Only 2 kilos in it on nominated totals, and it could go either way. It's going to be a very good one to see. Sean Noriega against Jaden Lowe in these 83s will be very cool. Sort of a past and present there, sort of clash of generations. Sean Noriega's been around for ages and still getting better. And Jaden Lowe is just coming across from USAPL as a young 20 or 21-year-old putting up insane numbers. Then the 105s, we've got Ashton Ruska, Michael Davis v Josh Hall. Pretty decent spread amongst those 3. I think in that order is, definitely the way that it is likely to finish, with Ashton taking the win, Michael Davis, who has looked good in training to be fair, and then Josh Hall a bit back because of his subtotal. And then in the 120s, you have Bob Matthews v Victor Rodriguez, which would have been the biggest clash in powerlifting. Bob Matthews v Rondell Hunt. Unfortunately, Rondell's still not fully recovered, which as much as that sucks, as much as selfishly I want to see that clash no matter what, fair enough, it would be very anticlimactic for it to be an injured Rondell. When we do see this inevitably, and I believe we will, and we definitely should, it needs to be a Bob versus Rondell in their prime, both at their best. So hopefully that'll happen sometime soon. But for now, Bob Matthews, Victor Rodriguez, quite a big spread between those 2. And then the women's battles, so in the 52s, like I mentioned, you have those 3 ladies. In the 63s, Christiane Hazard versus Angelina Martinez will be quite close as well. And then in the 69s, you have Jackie v Gabby, literally neck and neck, and then Meg Scanlon, who is the American record holder in the 69s, although she's coming in slightly undersized as just a 63 who's not cutting. So we'll see how that goes down. And then 84s, Jess Bittner v Layla Taylor as well. They'll be kind of close too. But okay, on to my first prediction. So, Victor Rodriguez, I think, is going to emerge as a 120 contender. So, this is a recent 2,000 pound train total he put up, consisting of the lifts that you see there. And the thing with Victor is he's only competed, I think, twice. Now, fair enough, he did drop that last deadlift, which would have been an American record deadlift of 386 if he gets on the platform. And the grip did give out, but if the grip holds solid, that pull looks pretty good. He's pulled over this on pound plates. I think he's pulled like something ridiculous, almost 400 kilos or something on pound plates. But I mean, that's on kilo plates and that's legit, apart from the grip giving out, obviously. So we'll see what he can do. And I know his nominated total is way lower than this, but his bench was only like in the 180s, I think, in that comp he did. So the fact he's benching 220 means he's made quite big strides. And because he's so young in the sport, I can genuinely see him put up something pretty good. My prediction for him is I think he totals around 925. So for each of these predictions, I'm going to be showing you, where I think these lifters are going to land and what percentage of world record that would be. So that would be just under 95% for Victor. Now, 925, I think that's reasonable to say a 120 contender. I mean, 940s, 950s is world's podium level. And as the 120s, that's pretty much just one attempt away if you're in the 925s. So yeah, it's my first prediction. Number 2, Sean Noriega goes 860 plus. I think he continues the trend of his recent form in his last 2 meets, where he's PBing his total again, finally, after all those years, where he seemed to stall and or slightly regress. But these are the best lifts that he's done from the recent weeks or so. Pretty big bench there, 215 is only 2 kilos off his best from the USAPL elbow depth rule set. But yeah, 822.5 is what that adds up to, which is still quite a ways off. Obviously, 857.5 is what he hit at PA Nats, and narrowly missed his final deadlift on grip, which would have given him 870. I think he's going to hit roughly 865. I think he goes mid 860s. I think he has a good day. I think he sets a PB total. He still sort of falls short from the 870 plus mark that he probably would be aiming for. But I still think he does enough to PB his total, likely on his second pull, and potentially still misses his last one. However, in the battle of the 83s, I'm backing Jaden Lowe, and not only to beat Sean Noriega head to head, but also to take Joe Borenstein's deadlift record, American deadlift record, which currently stands at 377.5. And Jaden hasn't posted much of his training at all. In fact, this is the last we saw, and this was a few months ago now. But you can see the lifts there. Very easy squat and bench, and this 350 deadlift is ridiculously smooth as well. 350 like an opener, and that adds up to an 810 kilo total, which I know is quite a ways off, and his best is 845.5, but all those lifts genuinely look like openers, and I can see a legit pathway for him to land on roughly 870 based on those being openers and him taking roughly 10 kilo jumps, right? And yeah, I think he goes for it on his final pull. I mean, if I compare that to Joey B's 350, I don't think Joey B's pulled 350 as smooth as that ever. So I think Jaden ends up on roughly 870 and breaks Joe B's American deadlift record and potentially closes on Ender's 380. So there's another monster pull emerging in the 83s. Number 4, Ashton Ruska is going to break the squat record, but not the total set by Anthony McNaughton. So recently from Ashton Ruska, so we've seen this 365 kilo squat and this 355 kilo pull. Haven't seen pretty much any of his bench apart from that one video where Bob totaled 1,000 and featured Ash in it, where Ash benched an easy 175. So that's a sub 900 train total. And the thing with Ash is obviously he had that real bad pec, or was a bicep, or some form of upper body injury that really hampered his bench at Sheffield. And since then, we haven't seen too much of his bench training. His squats and deadlifts are looking pretty good. And based on that squat and pull, I think he's good to beat his record squat, which is 375. The thing is, has his bench recovered enough to take the record, which is 979 by Anthony Norton? I don't think so. I think he needs his best bench to do that. I don't think he's going to get his best bench. So I think his totals roughly 945. Now, recently he has also showed us some other heavy squats and deads just in the last few days, which are below that of the 365 and 355, but they move very well and move very easily. And by all accounts, his training has been going very well on squats and deads, and he's peaked hit something big. And I think he will. I just think that with a sub 200 kilo bench, or maybe even just roughly 200 kilo bench, it won't be enough. 945, I think, will do better than what he did at Sheffield, and will do better than what he did even at Worlds. And that'll still be his biggest total in a while, but it still will fall short of what we've seen Anthony Norton do, which is routinely total in the 970s now, in the 105s. Number 5, Delaney Wallace hits 900 kilos at 93. Now, Delaney Wallace posts absolutely nothing to do with powerlifting. So all I have to go off are him, these videos of him talking about tax and business. And you know what? There's just something about the way he's been giving out this business advice that makes me think, yeah, that man's totally 900. Now, obviously this is a bit of a blind pick because I have nothing to go off, right? But the thing with Delaney is, like I said at the start of the video, he's always been ridiculously, literally one of the leanest powerlifters out there. Very underrated because he doesn't really post much physique shots like Pano or Russ would, but he's very, very lean on the platform, literally quad vein level lean. And so I think moving up to the 93s is going to be a good move for him. And similar to what we saw with Russ, we all knew he would be strong as a 93, instantly well into the 900s in his first performance as 93. I think we'll see Delaney hit 900. He's already almost hit 900 consisting of training lifts in the gym at roughly 83, obviously not cutting weight, but not fully 93. You know, if he has actually committed to the 93s, then I think he totals in the 900s, because all the cool kids nowadays are totaling 900 as a 93. And I think Delaney Walsh is going to join them. It's such a shame that we didn't see the other 93s here. It literally would have been Delaney against Dom Fuqua, who's a 900 totaler. Gavin Aiden was also in the 900s, and Petrie was also in the 900s. It would have been a four-way battle of 900 kilo 93s, potentially, if Delaney did it as well. Unfortunately, it's just going to be Delaney by himself as a 93. Again, I'm really committing to this. Like I said, I have pretty much nothing to go on to say it'll be a 93, but, you know, whatever. You know, that's the fun thing about predictions. You know that I like making my predictions specific, so there you go. Number 6, onto the 66 battle. Now, Jonathan Garcia, I think, is going to squat over 600 pounds and is going to reclaim his American record total. So that's a very smooth 270 squat that we just saw there. And here is his best bench that he's hit in prep, 185, which I think is only half a kilo below his American bench record, also moving pretty smooth. And then the best deadlift we've seen from him in training is 257.5. So that's a total in the 710s already. Like I said, 718 is his best total. He didn't have the best World Games performance. I think this guy is going to perform out much better, get some redemption, and reclaim that American 66 record that used to be his. I think he goes roughly, well, 721, right, to chip the 720 record held by Avery Jackson. There's a screenshot, by the way, of his 257.5, biggest deadlift I've seen him do this prep. Now, the thing with Jonathan Garcia is he's got a huge subtotaler, massive squat, massive bench. Unfortunately, the deadlift holds him back, and specifically, it's a deadlift grip. And anytime he starts to get into the 250, 260 range, which he's got all the strength in the world for, the grip starts to become an issue. And we start to see his hands opening up. I think he's able to hang on to enough to total 721. Whether it's on his second or third pull, I don't know. But I'm expecting a pretty big subtotal and likely at least one deadlift miss from him as well. But the question is, will it be enough to win the battle of the 66ers? I don't think so. I think Joe Jordan comes out on top here. Joe Jordan is going to become the second strongest 66 of all time after this performance, in my opinion. Or that's what I'm predicting. And these are the heaviest lifts we've seen him do this prep. This was just a day or two ago. He posted these up. 732.5 is wild, especially considering the ease in which he did these lifts. We all knew his train was popping off leading into World Games. He lived up to that hype, totaling 720 to win World Games, narrowly missing out on 730s on his final pull. This time I think he's good for 730s and even more. I'm predicting he goes 740 actually. Honestly, I could even see him do more than this. I don't think it's too much of a stretch based on that 732.5 training total. That 750 could be in the bag. However, I'm not going to go that crazy. I think he hits 740, which is still a fantastic day, and that would make him the second strongest 66 ever, behind only, of course, Shell and his 770. Currently, the second strongest 66 still belongs to Kyoto Uchiyama, who hits 725, and then Joe Jordan's equal with Avery Jackson on third with 720. But I think he's going to jump Kyoto and jump Avery and get well into that second spot. And we could see him potentially start to close the gap on Shell moving forward, which would be very interesting. But yeah, 740, which would represent 102.8% of the American record, which is quite a sizable lead. So Joe Jordan is putting himself in a very good position, in my opinion, to potentially win the whole thing. I'm not going to say he's going to win the whole thing yet. I'm not going to say he's not, because that's a later prediction. But he's going to be right up there for sure. Okay, number 8, Bob Matthews. He finally enters the 1,000 kilo club, pulling for the lead over Joe Jordan. So this was the recent 1,000 kilo total we saw from him, or a week or a couple of weeks ago now, actually, with Ash. But yeah, this looked pretty good. I mean, his squat was a bit tough, bench a bit slow, and deadlift was also a bit slow. Not the best 1,000 we've seen from him. We've seen probably smoother looking 1,000s than this. But by all accounts, this wasn't, he wasn't peaked exactly going into this. This was just, a block where he tested where he was at, and I think he's going to be coming in much better condition for this meet. And given that he was preparing to battle Rondell, which is what he's basically modeled the entire last 18 months of his career around single-handedly, is to chase Rondell with the blinkers on, I think he's coming in strong, and I think he finally makes it 1,000 kilos official on the platform. And he's going to do so by pulling for the lead over Joe Jordan, and I think he gets it. I think he totals roughly 1,010. Why 1,010? Because that's pretty much what he would need to overtake Joe Jordan if Joe Jordan totals roughly 740. So that would be 103.2% off the American record, 978.5, and that would bump him over Joe Jordan in provincial first place, because I still have Jesus to cover. But yeah, that's why I think he goes roughly 1,010. But yeah, low thousands I think is realistic for Bob. I think Bob is going to want to come out and pull for the win. He's obviously going to be pulling way after Joe Jordan will be. So we'll see what happens there. And it's also going to be interesting to see the deadlift battle between him and Victor Rodriguez, and hell, even Josh Hall, to see who ends up with the bigger pull on the day. Number 9, Jesus Olivares finally breaks his world record total on his second pull. I know, this one's a crazy one. How quick was this 432.5 though? That is the quickest I've seen Jesus squat any weight 400 plus. 432.5 was crazy. That was the last squat we've seen him do. We've also seen him do some crazy squat sets. Somewhat recently, or in the last training block, last few weeks, last few months, he's been doing crazy rep work with well over 400 kilos, 420, 430, 1,000 pounds, making it look like an opener. And he's been pulling 410, 420 with very smooth lockouts as well. So I think in total is 1153. There he is locking out 410 very, very easily, which I spoke about this in my last video in depth. So I'll leave a link to that. Go check it out where I break down Jesus' deadlift and what his recent training pulls have looked like exactly. But the reason why I say he breaks his world record in his second pull, I know it sounds crazy, but when you run the numbers, I think it's very reasonable. Based on his squat strength recently, I think he chips his American record squat, which is also the world record, and goes 478.5. I haven't seen pretty much any of his benching, so I'm assuming he's going to match his 600-pound bench, maybe go a bit more, 275, who knows. But yeah, 272.5, 275. Combine that with this squat, he's built a monster subtotal, and he would only need a high 390s deadlift to total 1153 from those subtotal numbers, you know. And at this point, anything under 400 I think is absolutely child's play for him. I know he missed 395 a couple times at Worlds with the grip issues and the soft knees, but as I said in my last video, travel's not a factor this time. He's competing in his home crowd, and we haven't seen him compete locally since 2022 PA Nats, and we all know what happened there. He put up his crazy 1100 plus performance, which was way above anything else he was doing before that. So yeah, I think Jesus is going to finally go and set a total PB. Of course, he won't count for an official world record, but he will break his American record. Now I say on his second pull, because I think he's going to load up for the win on his third. Again, Jesus has the benefit of pulling last, even after monster. There are some monster pullers. I know Rondell pulled out, but Bob is there, who's in the high threes. Josh Hall, 383.5 as 105. You know, Ash is capable of huge pull, you know, if he comes in healthy and he's back, you know, survives after squatting, I guess. And then Victor Rodriguez, of course, has a huge pull. But Jesus is coming out last, and he's loading what he needs to win. Unfortunately, though, I don't think he gets it, and Bob ends up winning. The reason is because, man, I really didn't want to make this prediction. I really wanted to say I think Jesus wins, but doing the math, if Bob totals around 1,010, Jesus would need like high 1180s to beat that. And based on the math I'm running in my head, that would mean he would have to deadlift in excess of 430 kilos. As much as Jesus' deadlift has improved, I don't think it's improved by that much where he's going to be pulling 430s. I think, you know, a pull for the win in the 410s, maybe even 420, I think would be reasonable. But I think Joe Jordan and Bob are going to put it way out of reach. And unfortunately, Jesus doesn't quite get the win here, which means he actually finishes off podium based on these predictions. The podium is going to go Bob, Joe Jordan, Jonathan Garcia, and then Jesus will be in 4th place. So those are my predictions for the men. Okay, on to the women's predictions. Jess Bittner still doesn't match her 76 kilo total PB. So yeah, I mean, the thing with Jess is, like I said, she hit a total PB in that crazy 2022 Worlds performance where she pulled that huge deadlift and totaled 585. Since then, her total has been down, even though she's moved up to the 84s. And based on her best lifts in training, that adds up to 552.5. I think she's going to go more than that. I think she's going to go roughly 570. But, you know, apparently her training's not been going the best from what she's been saying and from the vibe I get in the captions and stuff. So I just don't think this is the time where she finally breaks that total PB curse that's been going on for over 3 years now. So yeah, that's my prediction for Jess. Number 12, Angelina Martinez matches her advances performance at 63 this time. So she totaled 522.5 at advances as a 69, or basically not cutting. I think this time she's going to beat that performance, or I mean match, or maybe even slightly beat that performance at 63 this time out. You can see these are the best lifts that she's done since her advances performance, which was only a few weeks ago. So it's a bit of a quick turnaround, but this adds up to 532.5. And I mean, I'm assuming she's making the cut this time. If she doesn't, she'll be yet another 69 lifter on the day. But yeah, I think she goes roughly 530, right? So a bit more than what she did at Avances, maybe slightly lower than that. Maybe I'm being a bit generous there because some of those lifts were pretty crazy grinds, especially that squat. But yeah, I think she goes 530. But it's not enough to spoil the Powerlifting America debut of Christiane Hazard. So pretty hyped around her because, you know, I mean, this is her rapid 170 for, I think this was a set of 4. And this was only posted a few days ago. This is pretty much the only bit of training I have to go on based off her last performance in the USAPL where she hit 525. So not a lot, but again, I'm kind of shooting blind on this, similar to Delaney Wallace's prediction. I just think she comes in strong. I think Angelina Martinez had the quick turnaround from Avances. Christiane's coming in, PA debut, she has a point to prove. And based on how strong she's looking from that set alone, I think she totals roughly 535. The only other bit of training we've seen from her since the last meet is this set of pause deadlift she did with 170. And again, that looked very, very smooth and easy. Only about 25-ish kilos or so off her competition best, actually. But yeah, I think she does enough to beat Angelina Martinez. Even though Angelina is going to have the bigger pool, I think, you know, based on the subtotal, that squat especially, I think there's going to be a bit of a too far gap between them, and Angelina potentially pulls to beat her, but doesn't quite make it. But there's my prediction for the 63s. Okay, Natalie Richards. She's going to remind everyone she's still a threat for the 57 kilo throne. So 507.5 has been her best train total that we've seen from her. Most notably, a 185 squat, which squat has been one of the lifts that was most affected by her injury. That's only 1.5 kilos off her PB squat, I believe. This is also a 112.5 bench, which matches her competition best. Granted, it was a bit slow. And then a 210 deadlift. The squat and bench she did very, very recently in the last few days. This 210 deadlift actually came a few weeks ago. She pulled 205 more recently and made it move a lot quicker than that 210. But yeah, that's a 507.5 train total, which is only, 9 kilos off her best total. And she's finally starting to claw her way back into that 57 kilo picture. I know the 57s, you know, are looking crazy strong right now with Sarah Nullity mainly, who totaled 530, weighing just above 57 at World Games. But Natalie Richards is still right there. I think she's going to be well and truly back into the 500s. I don't quite think she matches a PB though. I think she goes roughly 510. So I can see her replicating those lifts from training potentially slightly more. But I think she's not going to be able to beat her American record. I think she attempts it. I think she loads up her last deadlift for 517 or to beat her PB total. I don't quite think she makes it though. So she's not quite back to her all-out best, but she's definitely better than we've seen her in the last few performances, which is going to be great to see. Because yeah, people forget Natalie Richards, 2023 Worlds best lifter. You know, so it's great to see her, or it's going to be great to see her back in the 57 kilo picture if she gets back into the 500s, which I think she will. Number 15, onto the 69 kilo lifters, and I think Jackie Maleta is going to break Meg's 69 kilo record on her way to beating Gabby Martinez. So I mentioned her and Gabby had the same PB total of 553. And these are the best lifts Jackie's done in training: a 212.5 squat, which is quite a ways above a comp best, a 140 bench, which is also above a comp best, looking pretty smooth there. And I haven't seen much of her deadlifts in this prep, although her last competition at NAPFs, which was a few months ago now, she pulled 219 pretty smoothly. So if you add that 219 from NAPFs to her squat and bench, so to her training subtotal, that gives you 571.5. Now, I think she's going to go 574. I think she does enough to chip Meg's American record, which is over a 20 kilo total PB, and that'll be enough to take the record. I'll speak to what I think Meg's going to do in a second, but I think that'll be enough to beat Gabby Martinez. Gabby Martinez's training has also been looking pretty good, to be fair, but most of it she's been posting rep work and triples, which is hard to extrapolate from. I just think Jackie's training and also recent momentum through her competitions is better than Gabby's, and that's why I'm backing her to set a over 20 kilo total PB and hit 574. But Meg Scanlon is going to further extend her 69 kilo record to take the win, not just in the Battle of 69s, but also overall. So Meg Scanlon, obviously 573.5 at advances with room to spare. This time she's in a heated battle against Gabby and Jackie. Actually, I forgot. Janae Kovacs was there at advances. So Meg actually did have head-to-head competition. Whoops, my bad. But yeah, I think Meg Scanlon is going to do an even bigger total this time. 202.5 squat double, which is only a few kilos of a competition best. Looking very strong. Apparently her squats and her deadlifts are looking very good, although she hasn't showed us too much of it. She's been hitting 200 kilos for back down doubles on deadlifts, which is pretty crazy. But I think she goes 575. I think she's going to do what she needs to do to take the win. I don't think she's going to necessarily go too crazy and go all out. I know she's mentioned that moving forward, you know, she's not sure whether she wants to go to 69s probably and commit to it or stay 63s. Probably will depend on whether or not she gets the Sheffield invite, which I'm pretty sure on that coming up soon. But yeah, I think she's not necessarily going to send it. I think she's going to do enough to win the head-to-head battle and assert herself as the best, or I guess reassert herself, or confirm she is the best American 69 in the world, as well as the best 63. And that's why I'm predicting 575. It is cool, though, that her closest competitor, Jackie Malater, they're in the same weight class, and Gabby Martinez as well. So it's going to be a kilo-for-kilo battle for that podium, which I think is pretty cool. But yeah, there you go. I think Meg Scanlon takes the win over Jackie. All right, on to the Sheffield Wildcards. So the men's Sheffield Wildcards go to... now I do have a detailed video where I break down exactly the stats and, you know, the previous trends of how they chose wildcards and who I think deserves it based on the numbers. So I'll leave a link to that. I did that a while ago, but it's pretty much all still stands and all still relevant. So I'm going to breeze past this pretty quickly. If you want more details, check that video out. But I think the first one goes to Russell Orhe. No brainer. He set the total world record, IPF record, 918 at an APFs in the 93s. And the second one, a bit harder to pick. I'm going Jonathan Kaiko. I think because they take Russ, I think they also want to take Kaiko, because imagine that, Russ v Kaiko v Emil Krastev. What a battle that would be. There are a few other lifters they could have put here. I just think Jonathan Kaiko is the one to go with. 919.5 is the second biggest 93 total we've ever seen, behind only Will Ball. And yeah, I think he's going to be a fantastic addition. Obviously, super credentialed, two-time Sheffield silver medalist, as well as multiple-time world champion, and just the greatest 93 of all time, resume-wise. So that'll be a cool addition to the Sheffield roster. And then the women's Sheffield wildcards go to Sunita Mulu. Again, you know, the crazy battle between her and Brittany Schlater. We just need to keep seeing that as often as we can, because every time they clash is absolutely epic, and you never know who's going to come out on top. Obviously, Sunita, you know, if she had gotten some more favorable ref calls, would have totaled 760 something at World Games. So I think she gets the first one. And Meg Scanlon, I think, is going to win the meet and also get the Sheffield wildcard. So she's going to have quite a great day. She's going to leave as the winner and also a ticket to Sheffield, which means we'll see her back in the 63s for what could potentially be even one of her last 63 performances ever, based on what she does after that, which would be quite a way to go out, similar to what Russ did in the 83s. But yeah, Meg Scanlon obviously, you know, has the biggest 63 total ever still, of 566, which is above Alba's official world record by a kilo. Not to mention she's done 570s as a light 69 as well, like I mentioned before. So those are my predictions for the Sheffield wildcards. But there you go, those are my 18 predictions for SBD Austin and for the Sheffield wildcards. Let me know what you think, if you agree or disagree with my picks, and who you think is going to take out the win at SBD Austin.